Hi everyone, hope you're all doing well, and welcome back to some Myth of Empires. So, most of you will probably know that I've been following Myth of Empires for, well, quite a while now, and I've done a few videos on it previously, as well as some of the beta tests and other stuff like that. But we have now finally had the announcement for the game's full early access release date, which is going to be on the 18th of November, which is awesome. I knew they wanted to try and sort of aim and shoot for release this year, but kind of as we were getting to this late in November, I thought it wasn't really going to happen, so awesome to see that it has. But for those of you who aren't necessarily familiar with Myth of Empires, what is it actually all about? Well, it is a survival MMO set in the ancient Far East. In many ways, the start of the game follows the usual sort of survival game tropes. You start off in the middle of nowhere with a loincloth, not much else, and if you bump into a wolf, it's almost instant death. Everything you'll need, you're going to have to craft yourself, from stone axe to spear to some throwing rocks. But before too long, you'll be starting to build your own first base, claiming your land, starting to explore the game's extensive technology tree to try and start to unlock some new equipment and level up your character. However, the game is really far more than just a survival game. Once you get through that initial start, then for me that's where the real fun starts. It opens up into more the PvP side of things with the large scale siege battles, recruiting, training and commanding your AI units. You also get to sort of equip them with your equipment that you craft, because you've got to craft and equip your own armour. For sieges, you'll be building and using your own siege equipment to break through the enemy defences. So you can kind of see this is more where the game has at least some similarities with Conqueror's Blade. Whilst we are touching on the PvP side of things, I just want to explain a little bit how the PvE and PvP servers work, because they are split. Essentially, you'll probably be starting in a PvE zone, in which you obviously cannot fight other players. Don't worry, the environment will still kill you quite happily. Don't worry, a boar will happily take your head off. But you will then be able to move on to PvP zones as you progress. You can build sort of the relevant buildings which will allow you to then move to PvP zones. In the PvP zones though, you'll find that you progress much faster. So there's this sort of risk-reward ratio that comes into place. So you have the opportunity to progress quicker. So it works quite well. Plus you also get the opportunity to attack and kill other players and nick all their stuff. The game does employ a directional attacking and blocking system, very similar to something like Mount and Blade. I.e. if an enemy swings a sword to your right hand side, you have to move your mouse and block to the right hand side. Just blocking in the middle will not save you, it's not going to stop you from getting hit. It isn't quite as smooth in my opinion as the Mount and Blade system, but it does still work pretty well. Of course, one risk with games like this is that they sort of become a guild-only experience, and that is sort of true for Myth of Empires. So, kind of what do I mean by this? Well, if you were to head to the PvP zone solo, I think you'd probably have a fairly hard time getting set up and not getting flattened when you encounter another guild, because you're not really going to have any backup, and I think that most players in this game will be playing it with a guild. In this regard, I guess it's similar to something like Last Oasis, where most players were, playing in guilds. It's not essential, and you can certainly play solo, but generally, I think it would be worth trying to join a guild in this game. Running solo is only going to make an already challenging game even harder. Another one of the cool features for Myth of Empires that I like are the horse mechanics. Essentially, if you want a horse, you first have to, go and capture one and then tame it. You've got to kind of lure it in using food. To bait it, use your rope to capture it, plus a fairly erratic horse ride around as you try and tame it. But of course, horses will not last forever. If they get killed, they die. In combat, they'll get killed remarkably easily. It's always easy to accidentally run off a cliff or something and the poor horse will die. So you will want to start breeding them so that you have, multiple horses. This is a fairly involved process, but it is quite satisfying once you've brought up the foal and you have more horses, and you can actually try and get higher level horses by sort of selective breeding. So actually doing the whole horse mechanics is almost a mini game in itself. It is in many ways though similar to the NPC recruitment. Well, not the breeding part, but the recruiting part. As you recruit people to your village, they likely won't have the sort of skills or abilities you want. You'll have to get them trained up, properly equipped if you want to take them to war, because they're not going to come with good equipment. Or maybe you just want them to work in the fields harvesting rice, which is absolutely something you can do so you don't have to gather, refine and craft absolutely everything yourself. Finally, let's just briefly touch on the game's building mechanics. I mean, I am far from a master builder, but once I got the hang of it, it was actually fairly easy to start building some pretty impressive structures, and it certainly opens up the possibility for some Rust-style epic base building, which is always going to be fun. I do hope they continue to add in some more building components though. It is a really fun part of the game and one I'd like to see expanded more. Obviously the game is still just releasing into early access, so we have still got a lot of development to go before we hit full release. But beyond the intricacies of the various sort of in-game features, I am just very impressed with how the game actually looks, graphically speaking. I hope it comes across well enough on the YouTube video, but the game actually does have some really very impressive visuals. And whilst this obviously is not the only thing that matters in a game like this, it does show kind of how much time and effort the developers have been putting into this game, which I always think is a very encouraging sign. Plus, it is kind of nice to get some pretty epic views as you're wandering around the open world, looking for some stones to gather. All this kind of goes to make for a pretty enjoyable gameplay experience. It is going to be a fairly hardcore game. There is a short tutorial at the start, but the game isn't really going to be holding your hand very much. Make a mistake and you will die. The game is going to be solo playable, but will probably end up being fairly guild orientated, kind of as we said earlier on in the video. Either way, I am certainly planning to get stuck into the game on the 18th of November to check the game out again, see what has changed since the last beta. We'll certainly be doing more videos on the game, not necessarily playing it very well, but we'll be playing it and probably dying all the same. I'm going to be running with the Crownless Order Guild though, so if you are looking for a guild to get stuck into this game with, then I'll put a link to their Discord in the description down below. I don't run the guild or anything, I just a member, but they're a good group of guys and I know quite a few of them are planning on playing Myth of Empires, so a good group to run with. If you have any questions though about the game, do be sure to throw them in the comments down below and I will get back to you. As I say, lots more Myth of Empires content on the way, so do be sure to subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching guys, and I shall see you guys all on the next video.